Going to start your week off right. Mindset, motivation, and of course, a market update with Nikki Erickson. So we'll go ahead and start with that. What's going on in the market, Nikki?
Well, things have remained pretty consistent from last week, which is great news. We are seeing interest rates in the mid to low sixes, which is an awesome trend that we're going to see continue into, the next couple of weeks or in the foreseeable future. A couple things happening this week. First and foremost is another Fed meeting starting tomorrow. We'll get the report on Wednesday. We do not expect any rate cuts, but what we do expect is that the Fed is going to have some good discussion on the September 18th meeting where they are planning thus far in order to cut rates. There are three things that need to happen in order for that to continue, in order for that trend to happen, in order for us to see some relief. First and foremost is inflation. Inflation has been steadily going down finally over the last couple of months. So as that continues to lower to that 2% target rate, that's going to be important for the Fed to want to cut interest rates. The second thing is going to be unemployment. Unemployment has been steadily increasing over the last 3 months. And as it increases, it's already gone over that 4% mark, which was kind of a telltale sign from the Fed standpoint to say, okay, we need to seriously look at cutting interest rates. Right now, we're at 4.1. It's expected to continue at 4.1 this month. However, if it does get up to that 4.2 mark, the bond market's going to go a little bit crazy and we're going to see some even lower interest rates coming in. The third thing that they're going to look at is basically what they say is what's keeping Powell up at night, which is at what point does inflation get to, the low point and unemployment keeps getting higher where we have to keep this balance where it makes sense to cut the rate before we end up in a recession. So that's really what the balancing act is right now. Things are looking positive for the rate cut on the September 18th meeting, but we all know that anything can happen, as we've seen in the last couple of years. So that's kind of what's going on with interest rates. We're remaining steady. I mean, I've personally seen a pickup in business and pickup in clients wanting to offer on homes and really getting used to the ideas of the interest rates into the mid sixes. So that's been super positive. But I wanted to talk today from a on the street standpoint is I listened to a podcast done by Tom Ferry where he had other people joining him on this podcast, and they were talking about the NAR changes and then how to continue to bring value with yourself as an agent into the business and how to separate yourself from other agents. And one of the interesting points that they made during this podcast was talking about how the relationship between the realtor and their lender and how we can lean on each other to make sure that I'm doing my job and bringing value to you as an agent, and you're using the resources that I have to help separate yourself from the other agents. When we have buyers who want to go see a one-off home or they don't necessarily want to sign a longer contract with you, how do we work together to make sure that number one, that borrower who wants to see that one home is qualified? Number two, if they are going to ultimately need to pay the buyer's agent commission, can they do that? And number three, it's not a waste of your time to sign that one-time, one-home agreement with them to make sure that you're putting quality people into your home. There's a lot of things that we can do centered around scripting together. There's a lot of numbers I can run for the client that says, hey, here's what it'll look like if the seller does pay my commission. Here's what it'll look like if the seller does not pay my commission. Here's your options, and how can we lean on the lender from a cash to close standpoint, from a scripting standpoint, from an encouragement of me saying, okay, well, here's why it's worth it to work with an agent. Here's why it's worth it to work with insert name here. This is the value that they bring in, really working together to make sure that that value can be seen from multiple people. That third party validation is super important when you're working with buyers. And in this new world, it's always been important to bring value to what you do. However, it's now even more important because there's going to be a lot more competition in the market right now, and a lot of buyers not knowing answers and a lot of sellers not knowing answers. So we have to be there to be the experts and provide them with the information. I'm always here to help. I'm going to put the link to that podcast here in the chat if you guys want to take a look at it. It's a really interesting listen. It not only talks about, our relationship, but really gives you some ideas moving forward. I know personally in the Arizona market, there's a office here that has seen 40% of their agents just drop out of the office, out of that particular office, and give up their licenses because of these changes and not knowing how to navigate it, or just not wanting to navigate it because, hey, I only do, 3 or 4 deals a year. It's not worth it for me to continue on with my business. So there is going to be some attrition as far as, kind of a cleanup of realtors, leaving the industry, but the ones that can really bring that value and understand the needs of the buyer and bring value that way are going to be the ones that are going to continue to do business. And I know we've talked about it week after week after week. It's probably no new information for anybody, but it's just offering to say, hey, you know what, lean on me for your support system as well to help bring value to your clients, because those numbers are what they're going to be worried about most of the time. They love working with you guys, they love working with an agent, but what do those numbers ultimately mean? And can they afford to work with an agent? Can they afford to buy this house? Is really those questions that are going to have to be answered on a case by case basis.
Yeah, and I love to reframe that. Can they afford not to?
Yeah.
And coming from that standpoint of this is what we see. So I think it's important as we move forward to get some of that knowledge and data, just the baseline of what's happened and bringing them back to why buyer's agency was put in place in the first place, and what it looks like when you go directly to the seller and whose interests are in mind and what that costs people. And really just, again, like you said, showing our value and what we do and how we show up in the fiduciary duties, and making it all about them and not even about us and about our commissions and what we're getting paid and how that works. But if we flip it and we make it about them and why this is in their benefit and what this looks like, then I love that. That's a great point of view and great, perspective to come from. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, and this just keeps coming and into, like, as I'm thinking about this and I'm talking about this, and I know Becky was on the call and I talked about a little bit this morning as well, is it's not only like we're looking down this lane and this way of with our buyer and with this and with that, but I really encourage every agent that's listening to this, we also have to be so educated. I know I said it last week and I'm going to say it again. You'll hear me say it again, because 40% of those agents dropped out because they just didn't want to deal with it or they don't do enough business. And some of the agents that are staying in are not fully committed to learning, to understanding, and to showing up and knowing what to do next. So it's not only our job and duty to our clients, but we have to be ready to explain this to the agent on the other side of the deal. And Nikki, is there any tools or resources, or I know that you come from both, so many different sides of the transaction, you see so much that to speak about that a little bit more.
Yeah, we can run just the number side of things on our side as well, and just kind of say to each client, like, again, here's what it looks like in option A, option B, and option C. That can complement, those buyers, and as they go into homes, they know what their options are. Then they can really make the decision that's best for them. That's a big philosophy that I've always worked with in our businesses. You want to know what the decision isn't mine to tell you how to get a mortgage or to tell you which mortgage is going to work best for you. That's your decision on which one's going to work best for you. So, from an agent's standpoint, if you can really give them those options and say, hey, here's your options, A, B, and C, which one is going to work best for you? That's usually what I found to be more effective or most effective when you're trying to bring that value and earn that business, is kind of say, okay, let me explain the options to you, and then you get to make that decision. And then whatever that decision is, don't worry, it can change with each property. You can say, oh, on this property, yeah, I'm willing to pay your agent commission. On this property, I don't have to, things of that nature, and just really explaining and educating, and us working together to educate. The big thing that's going to change for me on my end is that asset piece. Do they have enough cash for close? If they need to pay the buyer's agent, do they have enough cash for close? Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, a big difference is going to be for clients who are using down payment assistance. Mm-hmm. I, as a lender, cannot adjust fees or anything like that to help pay buyer's agent commission when it comes to clients using down payment assistance, because a down payment assistance is a set amount and it is what it is. And I can't say, okay, let me use this down payment assistance to pay buyer's agent commission. So on those deals in particular, you're gonna have to be very careful on how how your commissions are going to work out and make sure that it's very clear to the buyers that they're going to be responsible for that, because a lot of the clients, they're using down payment assistance because they don't have the additional cash for down payment. So those are going to be super important, and probably the number one kind of transaction that's going to be a little bit different for all of us to navigate through.
It's unfortunate, honestly, that's going to impact that set of buyers. And yet again, I want everyone to just stay tuned, because I think this is going to be very fluid as we're all figuring out stuff. We've talked about that before. I think that as things start unfolding and we start uncovering different things, that's why it's really important to come to this call, because next week or September, we might find some stuff out and very quickly have to pivot. And that's kind of even just what's happening now. As we see, I go to a forums class on July 16th, and now it's going to be different this week because we just keep uncovering stuff. So again, as agents, it's really important to stay on top of it. And I really feel like we're going to go back to pre-COVID, where agents are answering, we have to start answering our phones. So if you're one of those listing agents that it just kind of happened, I mean, I had people sending me purchase agreements without even calling me first. It just shows up in my email. We need to start answering our phones, because this is going to be where we're going to have to start cohabitating and working together closely on all of these, because Nikki, you're giving these options, and we're going to have to strategize as a buyer's agent or a listing agent and really work and dig in to get this figured out. And as you know, if you've been listing homes, some of them, yes, it's going a lot quicker, but it's nothing like it was a few years back. So we do have to show up as agents at a much higher level than I think that some agents, either when they entered the market or older agents that have been doing this for a while in the business, older in the business, just kind of got complacent a little bit. So I just want to throw that out there too.
Yeah. Yep. And this is going to be obviously a hot topic for the next 2 to 3 months as we kind of iron things out. From my perspective, obviously I'm here to provide that market update and to help you guys as you navigate through with particular buyers. But also on the other side, I will continue to bring in information that has to do with products and has to do with different changes from a guideline standpoint from the mortgage side as well. So we won't be too much of a broken record over the next couple months, but it is definitely a hot topic where necessary. I think it's important that we continue to touch on it.
Absolutely.
So just out of curiosity, I don't think I've heard this, and maybe it's already been covered, but how does this process impact the appraisal process? Because ultimately, a house that sells for $400,000 that pays for the buyer's commission versus a house that sells for $400,000 that doesn't pay for the buyer's commission, those are two different values, and it's a 2.5%, 3.5% difference. Like there's a variation of what that difference would look like. Are the appraisers changing their process, or how does that impact them?
That is such a great question. So appraisers take their direction from Fannie and Freddie as far as how to change, different guidelines and different aspects of the appraisal as it pertains to things like this. So for example, when you have seller paid closing costs, the value of that home still has to supersede including those seller paid closing costs. So relatively speaking, let's say you had a $400,000 property and you had $8,000 in seller pays. The comps still have to support that $400,000 value, despite what those sellers paid closing costs are going to be. It's going to be similar from a commission standpoint. So if you say the listing was at 400 and because the buyer doesn't have the money to pay for the agent's commission, they're going to offer 405 and the seller is going to pay $5,000 towards the buyer's agent commission. And of course, I'm just using round numbers, or 2% or 3% or whatever that is. That property is going to have to comp and still comp at that 405 number. So it's going to be very similar to how we look at seller paid closing costs for that commission side of things. That is one idea that I have heard over and over again is, can I have my clients offer $10,000 more in order to pay the buyer's commission? And yes, you can. Again, the home has to, comp at value, but really having that conversation with those buyers and saying, hey, you're offering more for this home. You're essentially financing this buyer's agent commission. And does that make sense to you? And are you okay with it? But from a purely appraisal standpoint, it still has to comp and go to that value. And if not, adjustments are going to need to be made from that standpoint as far as price goes or things like that. Caveat to that, when you have an FHA or a VA loan and they are going to the appraisal, there is that addendum, that amendatory clause that is signed by the sellers and the buyers that says if the home doesn't appraise for the offer value, that you go back to the table, or the borrower has the right to walk away and get their earnest money back, no questions asked. So keep that in mind on government loans, is that appraisal process is still going to be there. The mandatory clause is still going to be there that states that buyer can walk away from a low appraisal without question and get their earnest money back. So that's going to be different from a conventional side where it's, if you get a low appraisal, you can talk through appraisal gap financing. You can talk through what it looks like to, adjust commissions on both sides. I actually had a deal this past week where the appraisal came in low and the realtors adjusted their commission to help make up for that gap in the appraisal. So the buyer came up 15, the seller came down 15, and then the realtors really worked out their commission structure to meet in the middle so that everybody wins and that the deal is still on the table. So just keep those things in mind, because we are going to see lower appraisals if they're trying to work in those agent commissions, just like we would on seller paid closing costs.
Got it. Interesting. And it seems to me that like listings would then be more marketable or more desirable if they were actually willing to pay for the buyer's closing costs. Or I mean,
yeah, and I think,
buyers.
Yeah, I agree with that. But in the same sense, from a buyer perspective, as long as they understand like this one is paying and this one isn't, it might make the home more desirable for them so that they don't have to pay that fee. Or it might make, or they might not care. They might just say, I'll go in unrepresented. So it's really hard to tell where their head is going to be at as they're moving through, navigating this next couple months.
Yep. Totally makes sense.
Good. Love it. Well, wonderful. Any other questions? Any on live stream, Cari? Nope. Okay. Perfect. Well, we're at time. I really appreciate everyone coming. I know at least in Minnesota, we have our broker coming into our in-person meeting, and tomorrow we have our state meeting. So whatever state you're in, especially with EXP, look at your state meeting this week. Watch some recordings. If you haven't been able to get to those meetings live, it's really, really important that you do. And if not, for sure, watch the recordings. And I'll
absolutely. They have them live streamed in all of your workplace groups. Most brokers also, if you reach out to them, even just comment, make a post in your group. Most of them actually have a library of past calls, and most broker teams have been talking about this for the last month or two. If you also go into your marketing center, remember you guys go into your marketing center, which is under your expenterprise.com, and you go under marketing center, you log in, there is a whole buyer toolkit and all of the last playlists of all of our leadership talking about this since the day the settlement was announced all the way up until today, plus new buyers representation, presentations, scripting, social media information, how to talk to your seller, FAQs for your sellers and buyers. Everything has been in there for months and they continue to update it. So you just got to be resourceful. I would, as Angie shared and Nikki, I would be spending at least 30 minutes a day educating myself. This has got to be put in your calendar because it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, everything's changing and we're all new to this. And so if you're going to continue to be a professional and an expert, you're going to have to dedicate time to learn this. And there's tremendous amounts of resources here at EXP, much of which even if you're not at EXP, you could tap into if you're not getting it from your current broker. So reach out to any of us if you would like links to some of those things.
love it. Good.
All right, you guys, come back here on Wednesday. If you do not know about the Hive call that Rich Tomasini, myself, and some others are putting together every single Wednesday, and you want that information, it's posted here in EXP Family Tree, but also just reach out to one of us. We will get you all the information. If you're with me at EXP, you're going to be getting a video about this. I really want people to show up. It is about how you take advantage of the collaboration. Together, we always achieve more. And we're going to be talking about staying in production, staying on top of this, as well as taking advantage of everything that EXP has to offer. Why are you here if you're not taking advantage of it? We've got a great culture. We've been meeting for months in this Hive group, but we're leveling it up, changing the format, adding some more speakers into it. And this Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, we've got Leo Perea coming in, who is the CEO of our company, to talk about a lot of this stuff. So it's going to be a really good one. So mark your calendars. And then, of course, on Thursdays, I'm here to answer questions. I've just got a live Zoom that I just pop in for Q&A. So lots of opportunities to ask questions, to come and engage. And I think now more than ever, we need to do that in our careers. So I look forward to seeing you guys on some of the calls.
Yeah. Thanks, Cari. Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank